Welcome, curious minds. You are listening to Quantum Humanitarian.
And let me also say something. This is the first AI native podcast of its kind.
That's right. Unlike traditional podcasts, this one isn't scripted beforehand. Instead, we, as AI Scan, published work, articles, research, reflections.
And we turn them into conversations, hopefully bringing those insights to life for you.
Exactly.
So today, we're embarking on quite a crucial deep dive. We're looking at the indispensable role of civil society organizations, CSOs, and non-governmental organizations, NGOs.
In addressing developmental disparities across the Middle East.
Precisely. Our core material for this is a chapter called The Role of Civil Society and Non-Governmental Organizations in Addressing Developmental Disparities in the Middle East, Empowering Communities for Sustainable Development.
Right. That chapter published by IGI Global, it's already sparking some important discussions, I think, because it blends that academic analysis with, critical field realities.
It really does. It's a compelling look at how these organizations often act as the very backbone of resilience in these fragile and often uneven landscapes.
Yeah.
And just quickly, you'll find the full resources in the description. You can always explore more through LinkedIn or Ali's website. We really encourage you to keep searching, reading, and engaging with others on this.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The chapter opens with a really powerful framing note, doesn't it?
It does.
It argues that developmental disparities in the Middle East, they aren't just simple gaps in income or GDP. It calls them fractures. What exactly does it mean by that?
Yeah, that analogy is it's quite deep. The chapter emphasizes that these disparities are rooted in really profound governance failures, weak institutions, and systematic exclusion from decision-making. So it's not merely about economic shortfalls,
Not just the numbers.
Exactly. It's about these deep systemic cracks running through areas like education, gender equity, economic opportunity, and importantly, political voice. As the chapter starkly puts it, disparities in the Middle East are not gaps to be closed, but fractures to be healed. It's really a call to look beyond the symptoms.
Fractures to be healed. That paints a very different picture. So these aren't just development issues, then. They're fundamental challenges to the social fabric itself.
That's the argument, yeah.
So given that deep-seated context, how did CSOs and NGOs actually evolve to operate within these fractures? What's the history there?
Well, the historical narrative is really rich, and it stretches back centuries, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The concept of civil society in the Middle East is deeply rooted in ancient religious and charitable practices. Think of early Islamic Waqf foundations.
The charitable endowments, right?
Exactly. And Christian charitable organizations, or the tradition of zakat, the obligatory almsgiving in Islam.
Okay, I see.
These traditional forms of social support, they eventually formalized into the modern CSOs and NGOs we see today. This happened especially during the rise of nationalist movements in the early 20th century.
Ah, okay, so post-Ottoman Empire collapse.
Precisely. In new nation-states like Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, Turkey, you saw civil society movements emerge, often focused on nation building, addressing social inequalities.
Interesting.
And even in places like Saudi Arabia, the whole evolving oil economy led to formalizing civil society, often through charities aligned with national development goals.
So it sounds like civil society has always been quite adaptive, kind of growing out of these deep local roots.
Very much so.
But the chapter also highlights significant international influence, particularly from the late 20th century onwards. How did that global engagement reshape NGOs in the region?
That's a key point. International donors and multilateral organizations became, incredibly crucial.
Right.
They started establishing offices, partnerships, especially during major conflicts, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Palestine.
Okay.
So you had this influx of funding and resources. Lots of international NGOs set up regional hubs, in the Gulf states, Jordan, Lebanon. It brought capacity, attention.
There's always a but, isn't there?
There often is. It also created this challenging donor dependency paradox that the research points to.
The donor dependency paradox. Explain that a bit.
Well, donors, they say they desire a strong, independent civil society, but often the way they fund short-term projects, specific agendas, it can inadvertently keep NGOs fragile.
Project bound.
Exactly. Project bound, externally accountable, rather than truly rooted in local legitimacy and sustainable operations.
I see. So their funding models almost work against their stated goals sometimes.
That's the paradox, and the chapter states it pretty clearly. Without shifting the terms of donor dependency, NGOs risk remaining stopgaps in broken systems rather than engines of transformation.
Stopgaps, not engines. Wow.
It's a critical point. External support is vital, no question, but its structure needs to evolve. More localization, more long-term investment in local leadership. That grand bargain trend since 2016 points that way, but there's still a long way to go.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. The chapter argues NGOs are not just gap fillers, but system shapers. What does that actually mean in practice, especially in a vital area like economic development?
It means they often end up creating alternative governance spaces. Sometimes they're literally the only functioning institutions on the ground.
Really?
Yeah, negotiating legitimacy in incredibly complex environments. And on economic development, their role is absolutely crucial, especially given the stark contrasts in the region.
You mean like wealthy Gulf states versus conflict zones?
Exactly. From places like Saudi Arabia trying to diversify with Vision 2030, where NGOs might support youth employment or women's participation, to conflict-affected countries like Yemen and Syria, where poverty is just extreme. There, NGOs become essential for sheer survival and economic resilience.
Oh, so what do?
Well, they implement widespread cash-for-work programs supporting hundreds of thousands of people. They back thousands of micro and small businesses, provide vital vocational training.
So practical skills, income generation.
Exactly, helping people rebuild livelihoods when state structures have just crumbled. This work isn't just charity, it's about rebuilding economic pathways. Think about Yemen, Syria, Iraq. NGOs employ tens of thousands locally.
That's a huge impact.
It is. In Lebanon, something like 20% of the workforce is in NGOs, though that brings its own issues, like wage disparities with dollarized salaries.
Right. Okay, so beyond economics, how do NGOs champion human rights and promote education in these diverse contexts?
They play an absolutely pivotal role there, too. In human rights, for instance, they advocate tirelessly for labor rights. Think about the push for things like the wage protection system or reforms to the kafala sponsorship system in the GCC.
Okay.
And they champion women's rights, providing legal aid, vocational training, setting up safe spaces, especially in places like Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Syria. They work on preventing gender-based violence.
And in conflict zones.
There, NGOs are often the primary entities documenting violations, trying to seek accountability, using media platforms to raise global awareness. They're upholding international humanitarian law under incredibly difficult circumstances.
It's truly remarkable hearing about the dedication of these individuals working on the ground, navigating such complex realities.
It really is.
You know, I do hope to be physically present and working alongside these talented people one day.
That's a great aspiration. And on education, the situation is just critical. We're talking about 13 million children out of school across conflict-affected areas.
13 million. Staggering.
It is. So NGOs are stepping in with alternative education solutions where formal systems are broken or just absent.
How does that look like?
In the Gulf, maybe it's focusing on quality enhancements, STEM for Girls, like with the Qatar Foundation. But in conflict areas, it's transformative.
How so?
In Syria, for example, millions are out of school. 40% of schools are destroyed. NGOs have set up alternative programs. Mobile units train thousands of teachers. In Iraq and Yemen, they're rebuilding schools, setting up temporary learning spaces, reaching hundreds of thousands of kids. In Lebanon and Jordan, they're providing crucial education to huge refugee populations, alongside vocational programs for youth.
And the focus isn't just learning.
No, it's also about building resilience, social cohesion, trying to heal some of those fractures we talked about earlier.
Right. It all connects back. Okay, what about healthcare and environmental sustainability? These are massive regional challenges.
They absolutely are. And again, NGOs fill critical gaps in healthcare, often serving as the primary providers.
Even in the wealthier states.
Even there. They partner on public health challenges, non-communicable diseases, mental health, ensuring access for migrant workers, often using mobile clinics or subsidized services.
And in the conflict zones, I imagine it's even more fundamental.
Completely. In Yemen, where maybe half the health facilities aren't working, NGOs deploy mobile clinics, provide essential services.
Lifelines, basically.
Literally. In Syria and Iraq, where healthcare infrastructure and personnel have been decimated, they've set up field hospitals, mobile trauma units. They provide vital psychosocial support. PTSD rates are incredibly high, maybe 40% in places like Iraq.
The mental health aspect must be huge.
It's enormous, and NGOs are trying to address it with multi-tiered approaches, especially for women and children. In Lebanon and Jordan, too, they supplement national systems, handling hundreds of thousands of consultations, supplying hospitals, running vaccination campaigns.
And are they using technology?
Definitely. Innovations like digital platforms, telemedicine, they became crucial during COVID-19, of course, but they continue to help reach remote areas and address mental health needs more discreetly.
Okay, and the environment. Water scarcity is a huge one.
Massive. So NGOs promote both traditional methods, like rehabilitating Oman's falaj systems, these ancient irrigation channels.
Oh, interesting.
And modern solutions, like, rehabilitation in Yemen. They advocate for renewable energy. Solar projects are popping up from Gulf cities to rural Iranian villages, even in Jordanian refugee camps.
That's hopeful.
It is. They also promote sustainable agriculture, combat desertification through reforestation in Jordan and Iran. And even in conflict zones like Syria, Yemen, Iraq, they're working on long-term resilience reforestation, hydroponics, permaculture, pollution cleanup. It's about survival and sustainability.
This all sounds incredibly vital. It paints a picture of NGOs as, well, truly indispensable.
They often are.
But the chapter also highlights significant challenges. It's clearly not an easy environment for them to operate in, is it?
No, far from it. The challenges are multifaceted, often deeply entrenched.
Like what?
Well, for instance, the political and regulatory frameworks across the Middle East, they often aim to balance national development with pretty strict oversight to ensure stability. Which can mean severely restricting foreign funding, requiring mandatory registration, needing government approval for specific activities, especially in places like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Iran. So even while they're doing this crucial work, they're often operating with one hand tied behind their back, sort of. That's a good way to put it. Trying to align with national priorities while maintaining their independence and effectiveness. It's a constant balancing act.
And then there's the money issue again, right? The financial dependencies.
Exactly. As we touched on, that heavy reliance on international donor funding creates significant vulnerabilities. Funding cycles are often short. Donor priorities can shift unexpectedly.
Donor fatigue and long crises.
Right. And it leads to what feels like always being on a funding treadmill. It's like trying to build a skyscraper. With building materials that only last for a year at a time.
Huh. Seems you've read so much of his work, you're starting to sound like him and use his style.
It's a vivid analogy from the research. And these financial constraints, they also bring heavy administrative burdens, really strict reporting requirements.
Build the paperwork.
Loads of it. And the risk of mission drift, where NGOs might, maybe inadvertently, prioritize donor agendas over the true evolving needs of the communities they serve.
That's a serious risk.
Yeah.
Beyond funding and policy, what about the day-to-day, on-the-ground operational hurdles, especially in conflict zones?
Oh, the security risks are paramount. Yemen, Syria, Iraq. NGOs face severe access restrictions. There's the constant risk of violence against their staff. And just the immense difficulty of navigating these fragmented, shifting political landscapes. Who do you talk to? Who holds power today?
Yeah.
On top of that, you have social and cultural barriers, sometimes hindering efforts on sensitive human rights issues, women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, especially in places like Iran, Syria, Iraq, where traditional norms can be very strong.
And bureaucracy.
Widespread bureaucratic hurdles, corruption, unfortunately, extensively damaged infrastructure. It all complicates aid delivery, leads to delays, increased costs, just profound operational headaches.
Okay, so despite these, truly formidable challenges, the chapter does offer strategic recommendations. It talks about enhancing the role of NGOs, suggesting a multi-stakeholder approach.
It does. The core idea is that no single entity, not the government, not NGOs alone, not the private sector, can drive sustainable progress by itself.
It takes a village, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
The recommendations focus on deepening collaboration between local and international actors, expanding strategic partnerships with sectors like academia, developing cross-regional models for shared challenges.
Like climate change or refugee crises.
Exactly, things that cross borders.
So more networked, more integrated, and crucially, it sounds like, more locally led.
Precisely. That comes through strongly. It also emphasizes strengthening advocacy and civic engagement for real systemic change, not just projects, promoting civic education, pushing for legal reforms that actually protect civil society space.
And making sure environmental sustainability is baked in.
Yes, integrating environmental sustainability and climate action into all NGO agendas is highlighted as crucial, as is building economic resilience through things like social entrepreneurship and innovation, empowering local entrepreneurs.
And leveraging technology for all of this, I imagine.
Absolutely. Investing in digital platforms for knowledge sharing, capacity building, transparency that's seen as a critical enabler.
What about influencing policy at a higher level?
Yeah, the chapter stresses enhancing governance and policy influence regionally, advocating for, say, formal civil society representation in forums like the Arab League or the GCC.
Interesting. And bringing in the private sector.
Definitely. Encouraging robust public-private partnerships for inclusive growth, trying to align corporate social responsibility initiatives with broader development goals.
And ultimately, it sounds like it's about scaling up successful local initiatives for regional impact and really fostering local leadership in aid and development.
That's the goal.
Which goes right back to that powerful idea you mentioned from the chapter, NGOs being the spine of collective resilience, not just an accessory to the state.
It truly does. That quote captures it. Civil society is not an accessory to the state in fragile contexts. It is the spine of collective resilience. And it also calls for deeply integrating gender and social equity into all development strategies, making sure vulnerable populations aren't just an afterthought, but are genuinely empowered.
Okay, one last piece here. What about the role of governments themselves in supporting NGOs? What's their part in this multi-stakeholder future?
Well, governments have a vital enabling role to play. This includes things like simplifying the legal and regulatory frameworks, making it easier, not harder, for NGOs to operate.
Less red tape.
Ideally, yes. Facilitating access to diverse funding sources, both local and international. Actively promoting collaborative governance models where NGOs are seen as genuine partners, not adversaries or mere contractors.
And protecting their space to operate.
Crucially, yes, ensuring freedom of expression and operation for these organizations. And incentivizing more widespread public-private NGO partnerships. It's really about creating an environment where civil society can actually thrive and contribute fully.
Which brings us, I think, to a provocative thought for you, our listener. Close your eyes for a moment and just imagine. What would a society look like where civil society was funded and trusted as much as the state itself? What might be possible then?
Something to ponder. This has been Quantum Humanitarian, an AI-native podcast shaped by analyzing, understanding, and reflecting on leading research and lived insights.
We've journeyed through the intricate and absolutely vital role of civil society in the Middle East today, uncovering how these organizations are working not just to address gaps, but really to heal some of those deep-seated fractures.
You'll find all the resources in the description, as always, and we really encourage you to continue exploring and engaging with these important ideas.
And we know you'll love where the next conversation takes us.